The first aspect of the Penn State offense that we're going to go over is the 1-4-1 wing picks offense. And so essentially what we're going to have is two wing pairs that are going to be running their two-man game on either side. They'll start it. They'll either start on the right side or the left side. Usually they did start it on the left side, but then you have your two other players who are up top and at X, and they're going to play. And the most important part of this offense is that Mac O'Keefe is on the left side and Grant Ament is on the right side. And so when either of these players were involved in the pick, it created extremely hard situations because every team scouted them and they didn't want to switch off of them. And either one of these players is going to destroy any short stick matchup. So usually a player with a short stick matchup would start off on this left side and he would start with the ball. Then we'd have a player up top, and then a player on the backside. Then finally, we're gonna have a player that's gonna kind of play hang-up games right here. And so as they created the formation that they liked, Penn State would use a big little matchup by putting a short stick on the midi here, and then obviously the long stick on O'Keefe. And now as they played within this two-man game, they would discourage the switch off of O'Keefe or Ament because those two were extremely dangerous. And so within this example, we've got a video of this player coming through, dodging underneath, and they wouldn't even slide off of O'Keefe, and O'Keefe would just mirror to the top. But so a lot of times this player would just get open within the two-man game because they were scared to slide off of Ament or O'Keefe. Before we get started, if you are following along on a PDF, we are going to go through every single actual example that the PDF has. So if you are following along on that PDF, you're going to go to the second page. And we are mostly going to be working left to right from top to bottom as you usually would. So as we get to this highlight, the ball is passed from back left to side left, and you can see the players get into their 1-4-1 formation. They are a little bit offset on the backside, but they are utilizing the same principles. So we're going to get a two-man game with the player here and O'Keefe on the crease. And now as we run the play and the Dodger is trying to make multiple moves to beat his man, notice how the player will show off of O'Keefe, won't slide, which allows him time to get in underneath his defenseman and score. Now, if this is not Mac O'Keefe and they don't fear sliding away from him, I feel like this player gets doubled on his double move, but here they don't slide off of him. In this next clip, we get a better representation of our 1-4-1 offense. You can see the players are set up in their 1-4-1, and now we have Grant Ament on the crease, and now we're going to really see how the defensive players do not want to slide off of Grant Ament as well. So as Jack Kelly starts his dodge going underneath, the defenseman shows. Jack Kelly uses a really awesome little backhand pump here to keep the defenseman away. And I'm going to show this again really quick. Notice how after Jack Kelly face dodges over, he keeps his stick in his right hand and he throws a nice little pump fake back up towards Ament. That's what keeps the defenseman away from him, and this allows him to use a double move, roll back, and shoot around a screen to score. Ever finish your first week of practice and think, how am I supposed to build skills with these beginners without boring my advanced kids to death? Right now, most teams show up on Monday, you ask who did stick work, and 2 or 3 hands go up. So you dumb practice down for the lowest skill guys and your studs are just bored. With Team HQ structure and the Skills Academy, every player knows exactly what to do at home, and you see the leaderboard before practice. One director told me that some of these kids didn't even know which end of the stick to hold, and now they're making plays. That kind of progress does not happen this fast without the Skills Academy. When you show up and realize that they all did the work, you can actually run the practice that you had planned instead of dialing it back. For a team of 15 players, it comes out to $24 per player, less than the price of a team t-shirt. Go to app.powlax.com/teamhq and select structure. If you need to explore it with parents, a board, or boosters, just go to app.powlax.com/approval and create a quote. You'll have everything you need to get every player on your team fundamentally sound faster than ever before. So now, once they didn't slide off of Ament or O'Keefe, then they ended up actually switching onto an off. And so the example we have with O'Keefe is he comes out, he sets his pick, this player comes over the top, and then as these players switch, O'Keefe just kind of abuses his short stick matchup because now he has a player here the player kind of tries to lock him off, he back cuts him, and then they have a nice easy feed inside. And so anytime that a short stick ended up on O'Keefe, he ended up usually making him pay with some kind of off-ball movement where he would cut. Whereas Ament, once a defensive midi switched onto him, he would usually just dice him up with more of a dodging emphasis. In our first clip, we set up our 1-for-1. Mac O'Keefe sets an up pick on the left side, and then he generates the switch. Once the switch has been generated, the short stick defenseman is going to try to deny the pass to O'Keefe. This makes him come out way too far. Mac O'Keefe cuts behind him, accepts the feed, and finishes. Now, as we show another angle of this play, I want to talk about how Mac O'Keefe presents his stick to catch the ball. He presents his stick in front of himself because the defenseman is behind him. If he tries to catch this on his collarbone instead of leading with the head of his stick, this play is never made. But here, he presents his stick in front, accepts it across his body like an over-the-shoulder catch in football, and then immediately turns his stick, shoots, and scores. In our next clip, Ament actually starts with the ball, and he is going to dodge. Jack Kelly comes to set the pick. He sets a really nice pick, and Grant Ament runs him off of it, generating the switch. Now, with the short stick matchup, everyone else pretty much clears out of the way and allows Grant Ament to go to work. The short stick defenseman does a pretty good job of defending Ament until he decides to try to chase his stick. He gets beat, and Ament scores. So now in the event that one of the first picks didn't work, they would either repick the same side or they would move it to the backside and pick that opposite side. So we'll get into the motions that they'll have backside, but one of the motions that they have is an exchange. But so as the pick is coming on here, and he comes through and then over the top, and they slip and they run their two-man game. If nothing comes out of this two-man game, they will throw it to the other side, and then they will immediately run picks on the opposite side as well. And so if this hadn't have worked on this side and then O'Keefe kind of popped out, they can also pass it back to themselves and then re-pick the same side. Now, they can also refuse pick. They can do all kinds of other things within the actual two-man game. But if the pick doesn't work on one side, they can either run it again on the opposite side or this side. And just because these two players haven't moved yet doesn't mean that they won't move. I just wanted to make sure we isolated how the two-man games would work and flow first before getting into the off-ball movement. In this first clip, we're going to show how if the first pick does not generate any type of look, we can immediately throw back and pick again. We don't end up scoring off the pick here. The goal actually comes after throwing to X, but it gives you an idea of how the players can just continue to play out the set. So they set up their 1-4-1. Mac O'Keefe moves out to set the pick, and nothing is generated. He does a great job of getting through. Player steps away, throws to Mac O'Keefe. Now they're going to pick again. And so as the second pick doesn't generate anything and Mac O'Keefe moves up top, now as the ball is passed to the left side, another player comes in to complete their 1-4-1. So now as this player just mirrors up, the ball is passed to X. And now with the defenseman hung up, this player just curls the left side and scores. In the next clip, we once again start with a pick on the left side. This one is now an up pick. The defenseman defending O'Keefe shows towards the ball, and so the ball is thrown back up to O'Keefe and then immediately over to the other side, where Ament receives a pick, drives hard off of it, and scores. So now we're going to go through some of the off-ball concepts that the players that aren't involved in the two-man game would utilize. So if the two-man game is going on here, we've got a couple other players who are going to run their motions. And so we'll go over the other pair first, and then we'll go through the player up top and the player at X. So the first thing that we have on the backside is just an easy exchange. And so sometimes they will just switch places. They can have a pick here. They can run mumbos. They can basically switch places. But the most important aspect of these two players most often was that they would separate, and they would get to the backside pipe and pretty much even with the pipe or the outside of the crease and about 8 to 10 yards. And as they did that, if they drew any of the defensemen in here playing either Ament or Jack Kelly or whoever this was, once they drew a player, because these players had separated, then it was pretty easy to find passes through. Now, the player up top, his job can be twofold. He can either fade or he can cut the middle through. And so most often, if the play was happening on the right side of the field where either Ament had the ball or, Jack Kelly did, or they were picking with Ament, a lot of times O'Keefe would want to float up top, and so the player up top would cut the middle. And so Depending on the side, they would have certain specific reads for specific players, but for the most part, his job is either to fade or to cut the middle. These guys are going to exchange and separate. They can also turn and pick for each other. And then at X, he's going to basically play hang-up games. So let's say as this starts, he'll start in the first 5, which is the first 5 after GLE. And so let's say his defenseman is here. And as the play happens, he'll kind of sneak to the backside. And what he's doing is, if this guy decides to show towards the ball, he's gaining a step in case as the ball comes down and then is passed to him, he can now push the backside. And so in some cases, the defenseman will then kind of hang himself up and they'll be able to sit back and then look through and try to feed. But in other cases, he'll just kind of either have a step and basically cause bad approaches by the defenseman by using the goal as a pick. Now, the important part about all of this is that the picks generated looks for the off-ball players, and the off-ball players generated looks for the picking players. So isolating one instance within the concept of the Penn State offense doesn't really work, because every time one group scored, they opened up space for the other group, and they really worked well in tandem to do this. If this is a lot to remember, I put the core concepts and diagrams into a printable playbook that you can get for free when you create a free account on the POWLAX app. You can study it, mark it up, and rewatch all of the POWLAX videos on the new resources page. Watch the rest of this lesson, then go to the resources page to download it. And now let's take a look at some of the goals that they scored off ball. In the first 2 clips, we're going to show how the backside exchange plus separation of players does a great job to isolate one player backside off ball once another player tries to help the ball. So in our first clip, this is my favorite because it shows the IQ of off-ball play, especially by Grant Ament. So we start with a pick on the left side of the field. As the pick happens, the 2 backside exchange and separate. And as we freeze it here, we see this player inside who is moving to try to slide towards the pick. Then we see this backside player who has to split these 2. Grant Ament sees that he is coming towards him, points towards the other player, and the ball is then passed through to the backside, and they score an easy goal. In our next clip, essentially the same thing is going to happen, but we're also going to have a short stick who moves to play Mac O'Keefe. So the ball gets to the right side. We start our pick. The backside pair exchanges and then separates, and because the long stick inside stays and the 2 backside defensemen essentially switch, that puts the short stick on O'Keefe, and he cuts through to take advantage of that matchup. Now, because he cut through, this isolates this defenseman as the only defenseman who could slide. He does slide, which leaves this player wide open, who accepts a feed and finishes. In our next set of highlights, we are going to show Mac O'Keefe, who will float out the backside to the top in order to take his time and room shot. So the ball moves to the right side of the field. Grant Ament is just going to mirror, no pick. The player who's top center is going to cut through. The backside player moves to the backside pipe. This pulls players away from Mac O'Keefe. The ball is fed to him, and he takes a time and room shot from about 15 yards. In this next clip, pretty much the exact same thing is going to happen. Ament comes to set a pick this time. The player top center cuts through. Backside player cuts to the backside pipe. O'Keefe floats out and then towards the ball, accepts a feed, and snipes a corner from just inside 15 yards. In our final set of clips, we're going to show how players will play hang-up games with their defensemen and then take advantage of whatever the on-ball defenseman is going to do. In our first clip, the play starts on the left side of the field. The player dodges underneath. Mac O'Keefe is going to mirror. And now as this defenseman shows towards the ball is passed to Ament at X, which hangs up the defenseman. Ament bobbles the ball, which incentivizes the defenseman to go out to play him. Ament then catches it. The defenseman has a bad approach. And then Ament's all alone to curl the right side and score. In our next clip, it looks a little jumbled before you can kind of see the 1-4-1 take place. You see it here. And now as this player dodges underneath, the defenseman who is playing the player at X gets hung up again as the ball is passed to X. And now this player has time to look through the defense. The off-ball defensemen aren't matched up, which leaves the top center player open. He cuts through the middle, receives a pass, and scores.